Pushing Back the Shadows, support and awareness for mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Pushing Back the Shadows podcast. My name's Alex Davis and I'm the founder of Pushing Back the Shadows. Now in today's episode I want to look at something that might be considered a little bit difficult. So there's your warning. If you don't want to deal with anything that's difficult, then you may want to go and listen to something else, maybe some good music or something. But regardless, today I'm looking at something very, very difficult. You see, with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, bipolar, there comes a lot of, for want of a better word, baggage. Whether that's caused by antidepressants, whether that's caused by your own personal history, whether it's caused by the way the symptoms affect you, there is that baggage. And a lot of us find that the baggage can cause problems. And not all of those problems are just with us personally, with ourselves. All too often those problems come from the views, the perspectives of other people as well. And so this particular episode, I've called it Trudging Through the Sludge, because sometimes we can feel as though we are going through that sludge, like we're bogged down, like we are kind of struggling to move our feet, to move forwards, a bit like you would if you were walking through like a particularly muddy field. So I'm going to look at three things in this particular episode. I'm going to look at sharing your story. I'm going to look at the element of catch-22 that comes into it. And I'm going to look at treatment difficulties and kind of the perceptions that people have. So let's crack in, let's get started, because really this is something that I do feel very strongly about. The episode itself is fueled by a debate that I had on Twitter last week. Some of you may have seen the thread I posted about medication, others of you might not, but it was something that it really felt like it kind of tore Twitter in two a little bit, because we had people coming down heavily on the same side as me, people coming down heavily, not heavenly, on the opposite side. And it was one of those things, you know you've done a good thread when somebody actually turns around and blocks you. Admittedly, she unblocked me and then reblocked me, so I don't know. But really it's one of those things. It's one of those topics that's very divisive, but it's not the only one. So let's look at sharing your story. You've all got one. Whether it's a mental health story or not, you all have a story. It's your life, your life's history, or your life's works, or whatever it is that matters to you about you and your life. So we know my story because I've shared it dozens and dozens of times, but it is on the blog if you want to have a look at that as well. And I've struggled with depression, I've struggled with anxiety, I've struggled with self-harm. And it strikes me that you have these particular topics, depression, self-harm, medication, that people react badly to. A lot of people don't want to hear about depression. A lot of people especially don't want to hear about self-harm. And so a lot of people will make it very difficult for you to share your story. They will, try and keep a lid on it. They'll tell you that you shouldn't be talking about this, you shouldn't be talking about that, you really shouldn't be talking about X, Y, Z, whatever it is that you're talking about. They will tell you that you shouldn't be talking about it. And it takes many different forms. For some, they may just say, oh, well, no, nobody's interested, so don't talk about it, people aren't interested. There are others who will say, well, no, you should not talk about that because people can react to it badly. There are some who might even go as far to say, in terms of things like self-harm, no, you shouldn't talk about that because it may trigger people and others won't understand and it'll just add to the problem. Have you experienced that? Do you know kind of how that feels to be trying to share your story, to be trying to raise awareness, and to almost get it thrown back in your face? It's something that I don't really talk about, but I experience every week. There are people who disagree with what I'm saying, and I've talked about it before in a tweet, a trigger, and a minefield, which will be linked down in the description, where I started talking about self-harm, and a lot of people straight away said, oh no, you shouldn't be using the image that you're using because it can trigger people. I mean, I'd already gone through the motions of making sure that the image was different, and I won't go into this too much because you can read the post and see exactly what I'm referring to there. But it's a good example of trying to share my story and being told that I shouldn't be sharing it. It's difficult, isn't it, in the world that we live in today? Another example would be if any of you are video game buffs, a bit like I play a lot of them. Whether that makes me a buff, I don't know. But one of the things I used to cope is I play Fallout 4 quite a bit, and there's a journalist in there, and she talks about how people really kind of take up in arms against her. She uses the paper that she writes to publish truths. Like, for example, the example she gives is the big wall that defends their city. There was a hole in it, and it was patched up by a bookcase. And that was it, a bookcase. But through the paper, she managed to get the bookcase removed and the wall patched up so you wouldn't even know where the hole had been. But a lot of people would turn around and say, oh, Piper, why don't you publish something happy? Oh, Piper, why do you need to do this, that, and the other? And yet all she's doing is she's trying to bring about the change that actually makes the city a better, safer place. And for those of us who advocate for mental health, those of us who share our stories, our experiences, and try and bring about that change, we meet a lot of the same adversity. People make it hard for us to share our stories. Does that mean we should stop? I'm going to answer that at the end. But you hold on to the answer in your head for now, while I tap into the problem with the catch-22. And this ties in heavily with that thread that I mentioned about medication. You're listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. Where does this catch-22 thing come from then? Why am I going to talk about catch-22? Well, one of the aspects of the sludge that we have to trudge through as part of our mental health struggle is the one that I mentioned in that Twitter thread, the whole notion of treatments. A lot of people will straight away say about the antidepressants and how they aren't helpful. That'll be their stance on it, and nobody should take antidepressants because antidepressants actually do more harm than good. They're not natural, they're man-made, so why would they help us? You don't see anything else in nature taking antidepressants to boost serotonin levels or whatever it is that needs fixing, so why should we take them? Alternatively, it tends to be the case of, well, I had this bad experience with them, it did this to me, and this to me, and this to me, and really anybody who's got any lick of sense should avoid them completely. Does that sound familiar? Because that's roughly some kind of reiteration of the responses that I've been getting. But then you have people who say, well, you should do therapy, you should do all of these kind of dietary approaches, holistic approaches, and there are that many approaches and that many treatments and that many possible avenues you can go down, and different people advocating for different things, that really, you're in a catch-22. Catch-22 for medication, catch-22 for your story, and a catch-22 for the treatment that you will be undergoing, whatever treatment you tend to pick. See, with medication themselves, and this is something that a few people do forget, there is a lot of work involved in trying to find the right treatment. I went through 3 different antidepressants before finding the one that worked for me, and even then that had to be coupled with a mood stabilizer for it to do anything. But some people kind of go with, the first antidepressant, it didn't work, it caused me dreadful side effects, therefore each and every antidepressant is bad. And that's the way some people tend to work. And I found that some of those people will then come back and they'll say, well, no, it's bad, you shouldn't use it, and almost condemn anybody who does try to use it. Now, I'm not saying that everybody will do that, because everybody who has a bad experience won't necessarily say anything about them. But there are those people who do have almost that tendency to go on a medication rampage. But then there's those who say that therapy never worked, and that antidepressants are what you need. Or others still who will say that therapy doesn't work, antidepressants are bad, therefore you should go holistic. And that's one of the things that we can get mired in, this general consensus of opinion that people seem to give regarding the treatment plans. When actually, why is it any of their business in the first place what treatment we receive? If you feel that you need medication, if you want to give it a go, then I'll tell you honest, you're going to be damned if you do and damned if you don't. There are people who will say, oh, you've made a poor choice, good luck to you, you're on your own. And there will be people who will say, well, no, actually, it could help you, give it a try. So, you do what's best for you. You do what you feel you need to do. Try the treatment approaches. If you think it works, brilliant. If you don't, try something else. Realistically, the treatment plan that you go on is your business. It's between you and your doctor or your therapist, whoever it is who's helping you. Those are the people that matter. So, if you're taking medication, you shouldn't let anybody kind of try and pill shame you into not taking it. You shouldn't let people say, oh, well, I had a bad experience, so you really shouldn't be taking it. Because that's not how it works. Just like people shouldn't be able to tell you when to share your story, or what to share, or how to share it. They shouldn't be able to dictate your own treatment. Because that's not how this works. Your treatment is personal to you. You know what your condition is. I've talked before about owning the struggle that we go through. And all these that I mention will be put through as links in the description, so you can check them out as well. But I've talked about owning the struggle. You are the expert on yourself. Yes, the doctors and the therapists are all experts in their own right, but you who are listening to what I'm saying here, you are the expert on your own condition. If you need therapy, get therapy. If you need antidepressants, get antidepressants. If you need a combination, great, go for a combination. Whatever works for you is what you have to go with. And we need to get out of this mindset that our own experiences should dictate what anybody else and everybody else should do. This whole notion that I had a bad experience with antidepressants, therefore everybody's experience is going to be bad and nobody should take them, is exactly the same as British Airways lost my luggage, so nobody should ever fly with them again. Or Syria produced a terrorist, so all Syrians are terrorists. You know, it's ludicrous. It does not work that way. So whatever option we pick, whatever treatment plan, whatever way we try and share our story, there is that catch-22 in there. Some people are going to like it. Some people are not. Should that change what we do? Let's find out. But first, I'm going to look at a few of the treatment difficulties and some of the things that really can just add to the sludge. You're listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. Let's look then at treatment difficulties, because the main argument that seems to be coming out of these kinds of discussions is that antidepressants will not cure your depression, just like anti-anxiety meds won't cure your anxiety, and so on and so forth. But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember ever hearing anything that said that your antidepressant would cure your depression. It's almost ludicrous to use it as an argument because nobody's ever said that. The only thing that I hear people say is that it could help, it can help, it might help. Because the whole job of an antidepressant is not to treat depression. It might sound a little bizarre, an antidepressant medication used in a treatment plan will not treat it. But it doesn't. Because there is no drug that can cure depression. If anything, the antidepressants are there to balance you out. And it's something that people have to be aware of. They don't cure it, they just balance it. They get you to that place where you can live a functional life. And you'll notice I haven't used the word normal there. That's because I don't think anybody's normal. But that's a side point. But so they can get you to that point where you live that functional life, where you can cope with your symptoms. The part that they don't necessarily tell you is that it can be difficult. That treatment itself can be very difficult. The antidepressants come with a lot of baggage. Some can react badly with you and can generate different effects. Psychosis, suicidal tendencies, insomnia, those sorts of things. Sometimes they don't do anything at all, as was the case with me and citalopram. And sometimes it would take a lot of trying different things to find which one works for you. But does that mean that you should stop taking them? Does that mean that you should never ever venture near anything like, well, I've already mentioned citalopram, so we'll go with citalopram. Should we never ever venture near that? Well, no, of course not. If you're new to them and you've not tried them, it might be worth giving them a go. The options are there, and at the end of the day, that is what it's about. It's an option. You choose what you want to do. The doctor can make recommendations, the doctor can make the prescriptions, but you, as the patient, have the option to say no. And that's what people forget. But the fundamental point that underlines everything I'm saying is that it's your choice. And it is your choice. You choose what to do with your treatment plan. And nobody else should be able to say anything about that. Now, if you've had a bad experience with the medications, I'm not saying you've got to kind of button your lip and keep mum. Absolutely not. Make people aware, because there does need to be that awareness. But the way that we do it is critical. We don't want to be using language that will put people off them, because somebody out there might need them. And this is just a little bit of the things that I've been trudging through over on Twitter. But it all boils down to one point. So your story, should you stop sharing it because people disapprove? Should you keep sharing it? Medication, therapy, holistic approaches, should you stop any of them because people say they're bad? Should you use any particular one because people keep saying they're good? And what about your treatment? Should you stop doing what you're doing because it's difficult, because it's bad? No. You shouldn't. You should do what is best for you. And you should, because really, in terms of the medication, you don't know what will work until you try it. In terms of therapy and other holistic approaches, again, you don't know what works until you try it. If the treatment's difficult, if you start getting side effects, you have to give it a chance. Because sometimes the side effects come within the first week or two, but these things take 4 weeks to kick in. You have to give them a chance. And your story, you have no idea who your story might help. No idea who your story might help. Just because, for example, on Instagram, I see they put stories up, and some people say that nobody bothers watching, nobody bothers saying anything. Some people don't. But you don't know how many people that's touched and how many people's opinions or lives have been changed by what you say or what you do. At the end of the day, whether you're pro-medication, against medication, pro-therapy, against therapy, believe self-harm should be talked about or not talked about, you have a voice and you should use that. But you should use that in constructive discussions. The sludge that we go through would be so much easier if we weren't all trying to tear people down. Because far too many of us try and tear people down instead of saying, okay, do you know what? Yep, your view's different to mine. That's fine. And a lot of it, I hate to say, does come down to experience or what we read online. But just as they say, you know, one man's junk is another man's treasure, what you believe to be bad might actually be good for somebody else. I hope you found this useful, and I would be interested in hearing your thoughts as well. So if you could leave me a comment to let me know what you think about everything that I've discussed, about sharing your story, about what kinds of treatments should and shouldn't be used. And as I say, I'll put all the links to the things that I've mentioned in the comments, in the description down below. So you take care, guys. You have a good week, and I'll catch you next week for episode 34 of the Pushing Back the Shadows podcast. Take care. You've been listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. To find out more, head over to pushingbacktheshadows.com and hit subscribe to get all of our latest updates straight to your inbox. Alternatively, connect with us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/AlexDavisPBTS, or you can visit us on Twitter at AlexDavisPBTS. Enable Pushing Back the Shadows to continue supporting people in the mental health community, their friends and their family. By pledging just $1 a month, you could help us to continue supporting people with depression, with anxiety, with bipolar and other mental illnesses. You can also unlock exclusive rewards, behind the scenes, sneak previews of upcoming posts and much, much more. So head over to www.patreon.com/AlexDavisPBTS to find out more.